Hi, welcome to Assessment and Data-Driven Decision-Making, EDD 811 at Midland University. Looking forward to the opportunity of working with each and every one of you in this doctoral course. EDD 811 focuses on assessment, which is sort of sits at the heart and the core of what the EDD program at Midland University is all about. The EDD program really exists to promote a and uh, future and a sort of outlook in education and allied fields where professionals really are trained to lead systemic change efforts that result in significant gains, positive outcomes, and inclusive environments. Driving change really requires certain knowledge, skills, and ability, one of which is assessment and the use of data and information for decision making. So, as we think about assessment, I'm going to offer a working definition, and that is assessment is many things, but if nothing, it's a systematic process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data to inform decisions, to improve policies, practices, programs, and other aspects of professional work settings, learning organizations, schools, districts, and the like. Assessment is not really just about gathering data and information, which although, certainly that's at the center of it, but it's also using that information to understand, one, what's working well in organizations, in classrooms, in districts. The corollary or the contrary to that is what's not working, and then where systemic and systematic improvements are needed. So over the course of the term, you will learn information and engage in readings and other kind of activities that will affirm the importance of assessment for driving change. Assessment really does require us to have clear objectives, to know what we're trying to do, what success looks like, that even when building interventions, trying new pedagogies, um, developing new policies or practices, that we have to have some sense of what we intend for that intervention or that practice to do, clear objectives. And then we would depend upon the use of valid and reliable tools, which we will talk about both a little today as well as in future modules. And then we use and galvanize all that information to inform data-informed decision making. So let's consider a high school teacher, science teacher, who is concerned about students learning more about chemical reactions. To achieve this learning objective, she uses a constellation of in-class videos, in-class demonstrations and experiments, a mix of lecture, some videos, and practical activities that are designed to facilitate students' understanding and learning about chemical reactions. Now, while doing this, during the point of instruction, she periodically engages in collecting some information through 1-minute quizzes, feedback about the in-class activities or classwork, as well as speaking with students in the moment about their understanding of chemical reactions, how the learning activities are reinforcing their learning or improving their understanding of chemical reactions, and then using this feedback right just in time to make modifications to the instructional moment, sometimes rehearsing or revisiting information that was already shared, repetition of information from the lecture in the videos, and then sometimes even working with students one-on-one in what we might call developmental or remediation. This is an example of assessment, but it's primarily an example of formative assessment. Assessment that is conducted in the moment. So assessment is conducted at various time points. For instance, before intervention or before the instruction. It is called diagnostic kind of assessment. This you might imagine when, for instance, we offer students an assessment or a test of their mathematic abilities and then use that information to make decisions about the level of math course that a student might start with. This happens a lot at colleges and universities that use diagnostic tests of this kind to then decide whether or not a student starts in sort of college level math or college level algebra or beyond. When this information is collected during the point of delivery or of instruction, is called a formative assessment, much like the chemistry instructor example that I just covered. And then there are forms of assessment that happen after the teaching and learning moment or after the intervention is delivered. These we call summative assessments. And summative assessments really refer to those that are designed to test the effectiveness of an intervention. They're really to assess and measure the learning that is accrued after the intervention or the point of instruction. And they can often, sort of draw upon a mix of quantitative, numerical, qualitative, more naturalistic um, forms of data that are not so much numerical, but are reflective in words, interviews, other kinds of um, data types that are not numerical and not survey based. And these summative assessments can really help us determine not only where modifications need to be made, but also the impact and the effectiveness of an intended intervention. This really points to a feedback cycle where, once we sort of take an action, that is, develop an intervention and implement it. We start teaching in the classroom, whether K-12 or post-secondary, and we determine those learning goals that we can assess the students' performance and their learning just in time through using these diagnostic measures. We can assess where they should begin. And then after the point of instruction or during the point of intervention, implementation, we can collect data and evidence to assess learning as it is occurring. We can use that in a more summative way to take responsive action, and then the feedback loop begins again. Several key concepts that you will cover in this module are formative and summative assessments. You'll see some reference to tools of assessment, and then ultimately the notion of continuous improvement. And as you move through the readings and the videos, I call your attention to these key terms, as well as phrases and terms like standards and benchmarks. And then pay close attention to how we're going to define validity, reliability, criterion-based outcomes, and how they relate to our work in assessment, whether formative or summative, but really using information and data to then make incremental improvements, adjustments to ultimately drive and lead systemic change. Assessment really focuses on measuring certain kinds of phenomena and really kinds of outcomes. Like assessment is designed to measure mastery of information. It is also designed and can be developed to assess and measure proficiency of skills and abilities. It can be designed and developed in keeping with existing sort of theories, and we'll talk about this in a couple of modules, to really measure social-emotional learning and other kinds of outcomes, as well as college and career readiness. You will encounter lots of different purposes of assessment in this module through the reading and through the video, and I encourage you to sort of catalog that in your own notes. There are several major continuous improvement methods: Lean Six Sigma, total quality management, agile methodology, and even improvement science, which is sort of at the core of what we do in the doctoral program at Midland University. So pay attention to these, be able to distinguish them from one another, paying close attention to how we use improvement science, both in the program and how it will play a role in your capstone and dissertation projects. So the question always is asked, what does assessment really provide to stakeholders? Here are a couple of examples. To students, it gives them just-in-time progress reports based on sort of state standards or other benchmarks that they can use to assess their own performance. They can also use it to develop plans of how to practice, how to study, and get better. It provides teachers feedback about their instruction, about particular instructional models and pedagogies. It also offers some insights to where and when students might need remediation and help. To educational leaders like principals, it offers evaluative information about educators, teacher evaluations, and then even at the more aggregate institutional level, school report cards. And then lastly, to districts, superintendents, and the like, it offers some valuable information about school performance as well as how district use of resources, whether human or fiscal, help achieve certain outcomes. So as you wrap up this unit on assessment, you may ask, where can you go for more information? I call your attention to Module 1 in Canvas, all of the module readings, those required for assignments, as well as any supplemental readings, the video like this, as well as the one that's embedded in the unit, and then the textbook. Feel free to reach out to me as the instructor for more, and I wish you a very pleasurable and enjoyable voyage as we embark on this term-long study of assessment and data-driven decision making. Thank you.